You know, sometimes there's places in Idaho that you should live. Sometimes there's places that you don't want to live. But then sometimes there's places where you cannot live. What am I talking about? Let's find out next. Hey everybody, Dave Edwards, Treasure Valley Dave here. You know, your great real estate agent by your side when it comes time to buying a home, selling a home, or even relocating to the Treasure Valley. And if you're going to relocate to the Treasure Valley, there's some places that you need to know that you cannot live. And one of those places is right here. This is Moss, Idaho. Have you heard of it? Well, if you've been looking at your Google map, you probably have. But have you ever been here? I'm going to guess probably not. Have you ever thought of moving here? Well, think again. Let's get more into it. That's right, Moss, Idaho. Quite an interesting story. No, you can't live there, but let's go ahead and check it out. So there's Idaho, and there's the Treasure Valley. And let's get over here. There's Nampa and Caldwell, and between them is Nampa Caldwell Boulevard. And we zoom in just a little bit more. And what do we see? We see Moss, Idaho. But I'm sure if you've been looking at listings on Zillow or Realtor.com, you really haven't seen any houses in Moss, Idaho, because guess what? Well, there isn't any. That's kind of funny. What is kind of interesting too is that this road right here, this is Moss Street, Moss Lane. I think it changes names a couple of times. And just to prove it, I took a picture of it. There it is, Moss. So what is Moss? So I came across this guy. This is a local Nampian. It's me Chopsy. That's pretty funny. Apparently his name's Ryan Harrison, and he's an illustrator and graphic designer. And he did some research, and I'd like to share that with you. And this is from his Greetings from Moss, Idaho page. And he's a fiction writer as well. But he did some actual research on the real Moss. So let's just take a quick look at that. He said that the first time I became aware of Moss, Idaho was back in 2016. I was driving from Nampa to Caldwell, both in Idaho. And for a split second, my phone's GPS switched my location from Nampa to Moss, Idaho, and then back. Yep, that can happen. It turns out that Moss, Idaho was a homestead that was a stop for trains and car travelers back in the 30s. In this current age, though, it no longer exists. Well, it does in a little way, even though all that remains of Moss is a small parking lot, as we saw just a little bit ago. Ryan continues on. If you Google Moss, Idaho, the location pops up in the consignment sales of Idaho parking lot on the Nampa Caldwell Boulevard, about half a mile away from Moss Lane. And I'm not sure that that's even the store that's still there, but the parking lot's still there. It's not much today, but Moss did actually exist at one time in history. And yes, it did. And there's quite a bit of history there behind Mr. Moss. The Idaho State Historical Society has Moss listed as a community in Canyon County, about midway between Caldwell and Nampa on US 30, named for A.B. Moss, a local rancher. According to the Historical Society, A.B. Moss is better known for founding another town, Payette. We all like Payette, right? He supplied the Oregon Short Line Railway line with railroad ties and eventually opened up the Moss Mercantile Company in Payette. So what was Moss exactly? Well, Ryan says that from the looks of it, Moss was only a little stop on the Oregon Short Line Railway, a subsidiary of the larger Union Pacific Railroad. And we find that Mr. A.B. Arthur B. Moss, that's him right here, dashing fellow, isn't he? And then when he finally did succumb, you get some good information from his obituary here. The Honorable A.B. Moss, who passed away at St. Al's Hospital, Boise, Saturday afternoon of typhoid fever, was one of Payette's most prominent pioneer citizens. So intimately was he associated with all of its enterprises, his death will have a tendency to paralyze financial interest for a time. Mr. Moss was born on November 9th, 1849 in Belvidere, Illinois. Can you imagine that? 1849. 49. That was the same year that they had the gold rush in California, just to give you some context. He attended the public school until he was 16 and then came west and engaged in stock raising in Colorado and Wyoming for 15 years. I don't have to tell you Idahoan stock means cows. If you're in California or New York City, you might think that's something else. March 10th, 1881, he was married to Miss Celia Mellor of Rock Springs. I'm going to guess that must be Wyoming because I've stopped there a few times. Coming to Idaho in 1882 to fulfill a contract with the Oregon Short Line for 250,000 ties to be delivered. At this point, he's seeing the possibilities of the surrounding country, drove the first stake in the dirt of this fertile valley, and founded Payette. Later prophesizing that it was to be Idaho's most populous and thriving section, and he lived to see many of his predictions come true. Well, Payette didn't make it all the way to the most populous town in the state, but it is a very nice town. And if you want to know more about that, check out my website. In 1883, in partnership with his brother F.C. Moss, who survives him, he engaged in general merchandise, stock raising, real estate, and banking in Payette. He was the pioneer ditch and road builder for this section and was Payette's first mayor and many times school trustee, a member of the constitutional legislature, and at the time of his death, president of the First National Bank, president of the Moss Mercantile, president of the Cannery Company, chairman of the Asylum Board for 8 years, and treasurer of the Payette Valley Railroad, a railroad that his influence gave us. And speaking of the constitutional legislature, also Mr. A.B. Moss was one of the original signers of the original Idaho Constitution. In politics, he was a Republican and was a candidate for governor in 1896 on the gold ticket. He was a veteran of the Civil War, entering into the service so young he was obliged to enlist in an adjoining town where he was not known. He served in the 69th Illinois Regiment and was wounded at Shiloh. And here's his monument, Albert Bartlett Moss, A.B. Moss, 1849 to 1914. Wow, he lived through history, didn't he? So that's Moss, Idaho. Let's just zoom in here on the old map and see what it looks like. So it's a parking lot. And I was standing over here with the camera and I'm looking over here. It's fenced off, so you can't really get a good look at it. But this area right here, this is Moss, Idaho, right there. So could you live there? Probably not. Could you spend the night in the tent until you got busted and hauled out of there? Probably, but I wouldn't recommend it. So that's a great place in Idaho. Tons of history, as so much of Idaho has, but unfortunately, you can't live there. So this, Moss, Idaho, is just one of those places in Idaho that you cannot live. And there's other places too, and I'm kind of anxious to go take a look at those as well. But if you want to look at someplace that you can live, well, check out this video here because it's pretty cool. And give me and Marina a call. We'd be glad to answer all your questions and help you with your relocation journey. Or even if you're just already here in the local area, you want to buy a place or sell your home or something like that, let us know. We'd be glad to help. Thanks for coming along, and we will see you on the next video.